Now let's take up problem 3-1. The requirements in the problem. Number 1, determine the hourly bonus rate. Round the bonus percentage to 4 decimal places and the bonus rate to the nearest whole percent. Okay. Now we have payroll computation with incentive bonus. 15 workers are assigned to a group project. The production standard calls for 500 units to be completed each hour to meet a customer's set deadline for the products. If the required units can be delivered before the target date on the order, the customer will pay a substantial premium on early delivery. The company, wishing to encourage workers to produce beyond the established standard, has offered an excess production bonus that will be added to each project employee's pay. The bonus is to be computed as follows. Letter A, group success production over the standard times 50% divided by the standard units for the week, and this is the bonus percentage. Then B, individual's hourly wage rate times the bonus percentage equals the hourly bonus rate. Hourly wage rate plus hourly bonus rate equals new hourly rate for the week, and the total hours worked times new hourly rate equals earnings for the week. The production record for the week shows. So we have now from Monday to Friday, Saturday, and we have the hours work and the production unit. So first, we have to determine the hourly bonus rate. Now, the actual production for the week is totaling 330,528, and the standard units is 616 times 500. So that's now the number of hours worked, and we multiply it by 500 units. So hours worked 616 multiplied by the hourly number of units of 500. So we have 308,000 units. So there is an excess over the standard of 22,528. Now for the calculation of bonus percentage, we have 22,528 divided by 308,000 units equals 0.03657 or 3.657. So we are now dividing the excess over the standard, and we divide that by the standard number of units. Now, we go to number 2. We have now the Whitmartian's total wages as required. What are the total wages of Whitmartian, who work 40 hours at the rate of 15 per hour? So 15, that's the hourly wage, and we multiply it by 3.657. The bonus computed in number 1. So that gives us $5.5 per hour. So 15, we have now the bonus of 0.55 per hour is equal to, so that gives us the total hourly rate of 15.55. So that's multiplying, and after that we have to show that the rate of Whitmartian's total wages now for the week, and the hourly rate is 15.55. Multiply that by the number of hours worked during the week of 40, so that gives us the total wages for the week of $622. Then in requirement number 3, what are the total wages of our Emerson who work 35 hours at a base rate of 20 per hour? So we have now the 20, this hourly rate multiplied by 3.67, the bonus. So that's equivalent to 7. Okay, 7. So you now multiply 40 hours times 15.55. That's the hourly wage rate for the week. We have now the total wages for the week as computed. Now, and the last requirement. Now, what are the total wages of our Emerson who work 35 hours at a base rate of 20? So total wages now is equal to the bonus of 0.73 per hour. We multiply that by, or we add 20 plus 0.73, we have the hourly rate for the week, and we got 35 hours work, and you multiply that by the hourly rate for the week. So 725.55, that's the total wages for the week. Next, we go to problem 3-2. In 3-2, we have now the requirement, prepare a labor time record for arends for the week ended June 29, 2016, and compute the amounts, direct labor costs by jobs and indirect labor costs created by arranged work for the week. So we have now Sunday arrange of 55 here. SS number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is a grade 1 machinist who earns $20 per hour. So that's the rate of the worker. On Monday, June 24 through Wednesday, June 26, she worked 4 hours per day on each job, 7 and 25. So you got 7 and 25, and that's on Monday. On Wednesday, June 26, she worked 4 hours per day on each job, 7 and 2525. On Thursday and Friday of the week, she worked 6 hours per day on job 2525 and 2 hours per day on maintenance. So it will be the labor. And her supervisor is Pete Colks, who assigns an all job deposits. We have now the Colks, okay, who assigned, no? Who signs off on all labor time records on Saturday of the week just ended. So we now have the labor time here for Sunday up to Saturday. So job number 0, 0. Okay, so first we have job numbers, job 007 to 525, and then the maintenance. And from Sunday, no work. Monday, we have 4 hours. 4 hours. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we have the total now of 4 job 007. The total here of which is the biggest. Okay. So for Monday, we have 4 hours for stated, and the same with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 0, Friday, and Saturday, 0. For job 007. And as stated, we now have 2 jobs to be considered, job 2525. And on Monday, June 24 through Wednesday, June 26, she worked 4 hours per day on each of jobs 7 and 2525. So we now get June, we have Monday, that's Monday through Wednesday. So we have 3 days. And for job 007, she worked for 4 hours. And for job 2525 for another 4 hours. Then on Thursday and Friday of the week, she worked 6 hours per day for job 2525. So 6 hours per day and 2 hours per day on maintenance. So on maintenance, that's Thursday and Friday. Now, no more work on Saturday. So for the totals, for job 007, the total of 12 hours. And for job 2525, total of 24 hours. And the maintenance, 4 hours. And for the totals, Monday, 8 hours, Tuesday at 8 hours, Wednesday, 8 hours, Thursday, 8 hours, Friday, 8 hours, Saturday, 0. Now we get the totals for job 007, 12 hours, job 2525, 24 hours, and the maintenance for 4 hours. So that makes total of 40 hours. Now the date is June 29, 2016. Now that's June 29, meaning on the last day, 26, 27. Okay, 24, 25, 26. Then we have 27 and 28. Now, who signs off on all labor time records on Saturday of the week ending? So the week ending is Saturday. No more work, but only for the filling up and the computation of the payroll cost. So we have now the requirement for number 1, labor time record for the week ended June 29, 2016. Compute the amounts of direct labor costs by job and indirect labor costs created by Aaron's work for the week. So for direct labor cost, we have now the cost assigned to jobs 007, that's 12 hours, and job 2525 for 24 hours, and the hourly rate is 20. So we get 240 and 480 for job 007 and 2525 respectively. Then for the indirect labor cost, for the maintenance, that's 4 hours times 20. So in other words, 80. Now these are the amounts of direct labor cost and indirect labor cost. So we have now 3-1 and 3-2. Now we go to 3-5. We have 3-5. This problem I already assigned. So take note of 3-5. What does problem 3-5 ask for? Okay. 3-5 question required. Calculate the total payroll and total net earnings for the week. Assume that an 18% deduction for federal income tax is required in addition to FICA deductions. Assume that none of the employee employees has achieved the maximums for FICA and unemployment taxes. So we have now the determination of the total payroll in number 1, and in number 2 we have the journal entries. In number 3 it's still the journal entry, and number 4 we have the dollar amount of labor that's chargeable to each van. So to the extent that payroll calculation and distribution over time and idle time. A rush order was accepted by Barclays Conversions for 5 van conversions. The labor time records for the week ended January 27 show the following: hours not work on vans are idle time and are not charged to the job. So meaning hours not work are considered as idle time and are not charged to the job. So we have now the employees. Klimbara is supervisor. Then we have the workers, Cow, Okoth, Perry, Kate, Olo, and Khan. All employees are paid $20 per hour except Klimbara, who receives $25 per hour. All overtime premium pay except Klimbara's is chargeable to the job, and all employees including Klimbara, receive time and a half for overtime hours. So we now determine the total payroll. So for the number of hours which we are given in column 1, we just copy the number of hours: 42, 45, 48, 48, 45, 42, and 40. And now we have the regular earnings, multiplying now our number of hours with the basic rate. We have the basic rate equal to 20 per hour. So the basic rate, that's equal to 20 per hour. While Kiambara is paid $25 an hour. So that your pay of Kiambara is equal now to here. We have 1,050 for the regular earnings, and cow, that means 45 times 20. All the workers are paid at $20 per hour, so that will be included as part of their regular earnings. Now for the overtime premium, no, if as stated, all employees including Limbara receive time and a half for overtime hours. So if the overtime rate now is to be determined, if the salary of Kiambara is 25 per hour, so the overtime premium rate is 12.50 per hour. That's the overtime premium rate, which is 50% of the basic rate of 25. So 12.50 times 2 is 25. While the other workers now, the overtime is now equal to 45 minus 40. And the rate of cow is the same with the other direct workers. The rate is $20 per hour, and that means that the overtime premium rate 50% is equal to $10 per hour. So 50, that's 20, that's the regular rate, and then we multiply that by the overtime rate of 50%. That gives us 10, and 10 multiplied by the overtime hours. So for cow, the overtime hours is 5 times 10 is 50. For Okoth, 8 overtime hours times 10 is 80. Perry, 80 man. Then for Tate, we have 45 minus 40. 5 times 10 equals 50. And then for ulo, that's equal to 42 minus 40. So you still have 2 hours overtime. 2 multiplied by 1250. I mean 2 multiplied by 10. The overtime premium rate. So you now get 20. Khan has no overtime. No overtime. So the idle time is included in regular earnings. The idle time is included. So we have now the labor time records, our distribution. So you look at it with beginning with cow, then we have Ukot assigned to the different bands, Perry, and we have now Tate for the different bands. And as stated, hours not work on bands are idle time and are not charged to the job. Hours not work. Hours not work on bands. So hours not work on bands. Now we take note of the hours. That's we have now for Perry, 48 hours. Date now is 15 plus 15 plus 15, meaning 45. And then Ulo, total hours work is 42 minus 32, meaning there are a total of 10 hours idle. Then for Khan, 40 minus 30 is equal to 10 for the idle time. So we now get the idle time for Ulo, 10 multiplied by 10 hours multiplied by 20, it means 200. And kan 20 ang iyang idle time times 20 is still 200. So the idle time is already included in regular earnings of 400. Stated the idle time, the hours not work on bands are idle time and are not charged to the job. So are not charged to the job. Now we go to the total earnings of Kiambara, and we have now Cow and the other workers each receive 1,040. Then 48, it's now a total of 950 for the total earnings. And for Ulo, it's a total now of 840 plus 20 is 860. The same with Kan for 800. So we now consider the total earnings of 6,715, and then the FICA tax is 8%, 8% of the gross. The income tax is also 8% of the gross. So you try to see the gross of Kiambara is 1,075, then 8% of that is equal to 86. Then the 18% is taken again by multiplying 18% by the total earnings. So the total earnings is here we have for Kiambara 1,075 and FICA and the other deductions. So net amount is only 795.50. Now in requirement number 2, we are going to prepare the journal entries to record and pay the payrolls. We now debit payroll 6,715 for the total earnings. Credit FICA tax payable, employees income tax payable, and wages payable 4,969.10. So this is now how you present the entry for the payroll, and so you debit wages payable and you credit to cash. Now for number 3, prepared journal entry to distribute the payroll to the appropriate accounts. So we have now the work in process with a total of 6,715. That's the total payroll. Then the idle time, that's equal to 20 hours. Actually, you have it in the schedule, the idle time of Kiambara and pair. We have now the other party with idle time. So as long as you determine it's with 2. So the FICA tax payable, employees income tax, and wages payable in the summary. And now we have the entry in requirement 2 to finally credit wages payable for the net earnings and finally credit to cash. Now, in order to distribute the payroll cost, how much is the payroll cost is to be distributed, no? So how do we distribute? 5,240 will be distributed to work in process. That's for direct labor. Total gross earnings, 6,715. And then we deduct the idle time of 400 because as stated, it should not be charged to the job. So we have now to deduct the 200 of each worker, no? There are 2 of them. And we credit, we include in the supervisor the amount of 1,075. So the 1,075, we are now deducting here, debit to work in process, only for 5,240, gross earnings of 6,715 minus the idle time of 400, and we have the supervisor with it's seen that we have the total deduction of 1,475. The 1,075 is the total earnings of the supervisor. So you can see how we have now the 1,475. That's the amount of indirect labor, paid to supervisor 1,075, and the idle time for 400. And we deduct this from the payroll. We have now the amount of 400 to be deducted and 1,075. So the amount of payroll cost that will be debited to work in process is 5,240, while the other portion should be charged to factory overhead. Now you have the entry debit to work in process, and now we credit to the account payroll. Now these are your requirements for numbers 1 up to number 3, and requirement number 4 for the problem 5. Requirement number 4, determine the dollar amount of labor that's chargeable to each one assuming that the overtime costs are proportionate to the regular hours used on the vans. Okay, so in number 4, we now distribute and determine the dollar amount of labor chargeable to each van, assuming that the overtime costs are proportionate to the regular hours used on the vans. First, compute an average labor rate for each worker, including overtime premium, and then use that rate of exchange. All workers, we have now workers hours to ones on the of the nearest. Okay, so we now have the since overtime is proportionate to regular hours chargeable to vans, an average labor rate including overtime premium can be calculated and used for distribution as follows. So we have now the total hours charged to vans, then we have the total earnings chargeable to vans, and the average labor rate including the overtime for the week. So for cow, we have now the total of 45 hours for cow, no? So you can see 45 hours for cow and distributed to the various funds. So total earnings chargeable to funds is 950. That includes the overtime. So we have now the average labor rate, including the overtime for the week, is 21.11. Taken by dividing 950 by 45. So we have now two OCOS, 1,040. May I refer you back to a requirement number 1 with the number of hours in 3-5, with the number of hours in 3-5. So you can now get 1,075. Actually, initially it was 1,050 with overtime sa supervisor. But to the workers is 950, 1,040, and 950. So the workers, okay. And now we have to allocate in the case of here. We are including here the total earnings chargeable to bonds, and we divide by total number of hours. So we have the average labor rate, including the overtime for the week, and the distribution of the labor cost to bonds using calculated average labor rate to cow for van number 1. It's here we have 211.10 to van number 1. Okay, 211.10 to OCOS, it's 520. Now depending, no, because we have allocations to the various funds with regards to the time. So for example, for van number 1, cow has spent 10 hours. So if you use the average rate of 21.11 to van number 1, that's 211.10. And to van number 2 is still 10. So 211.10, the same with van number 3 and van number 4. So 211.10. Then for UCOS, here we are, please try to consider the totals for van number 1, for cow, van number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And for van number 5, here, there is no more amount in the column for cow because the total number of hours of cow is 40. Anyway, by the way, there are 5 hours worked by cow in van number 5. So we multiply 5 hours by 21.11. So we now get the sum that's equal to 600 of 949.95. Then to Ukot, we have an average rate of 21.67, and it's spent to van number 1 24 hours. So we have 520, and the same with van number 2, total of 1,000. Okay, then to Perry, we now have for Perry, he worked on van number 3 and number 4. So number 3 and number 4, and the average rate of Perry is 21.67. So 21 point. Okay, so we now get the rate for Perry, still of 21.67, but you work on job number 3 and 4. Okay, so for we have now si Perry 520 and 520, 1,040. Ang 520 ni Perry, amo na ang 21.67 times number of hours. Then Tate, we have the number of hours of Tate is 45 with total cost here of 950. So Perry worked on 2 vans with 24 and 24 hours. And next, we have Tate work for total of 45 hours distributed to vans number 1, 2, and 3. And Ula will be working on the remaining 2 vans, Kuku and Lisan. Okay, so we now again multiply the number of hours by the basic rate. Okay, so the second requirement, fourth, the amount of labor that's chargeable to each one, assuming that the overtime costs are proportionate to the regular hours used on the funds. Okay, so round deliberates too. Finally, we have the totals for the direct workers. We have the totals to be considered in van number 1. So we have now the total cost of van number 1, van number 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you will notice how it's allocated for each of these funds. And you have the as risk. Okay, now we go to the next problem I assigned. So far is the longest problem. Summary of payroll deductions in 310. Okay. I'll move to sige. So we now get 3-10. 3-10 required so far this is the longest problem, and let's try to take this up. Required, prepare the journal entries to record the foregoing transactions, including the distribution of payroll costs. So we have now the journal entries in requirement number 1. With the journal entries, here we have the summary, no? For, okay, let's have 3-10 for our required journal entries, and the rest of the requirements. Okay, now 310. The factory payroll for the week is $500,000, consisting of $300,000 earned by 250 direct laborers and 200,000 earned by 150 indirect laborers. The total of factory bonuses to be received at year end is estimated at 750,000. All factory workers receive a 2-week paid vacation and 10 peso paid holidays. So in other words, we have the policy of the company in connection with the payment of whatever vacation leave pay. Now on we have now the entries on January 7. Let's go to the transactions. Following is narrative with transactions completed during January. January 7, recorded total earnings of factory employees amounting to 68,200, less deductions for employees' income taxes and FICA taxes. So we now debit to payroll 68,200, employees' income tax normally at the rate of 10%, and FICA tax payable at 8%, and the wages payable or accrued payroll is the balancing figure, which amount is paid on January 7. Then that's upon the issuance of the check. Next, on January 14, recorded total earnings of factory employees amounting to 66,300, less deductions. And at the same time, we have the employees' income taxes. So in January 14, again, we debit to payroll 66,300, credit to employees' income tax payable at 10%, FICA tax at 8%, and credit to wages payable. Also, we should check for payment to the payroll. So we now debit payroll and debit wages payable and credit to cash upon payment of 54,366. Then on January 15, we again recorded administrative salaries and sales salaries, less deductions. So we now debit to on January 15, debit to payroll for 28,000 in credit, employees income tax payable. So we have now the amount of employees, no? So we are referring to payroll, debit for payroll, 28,000, credit to employees income tax payable, FICA tax payable, and wages payable. And also on January 15, there was payment of the salaries. Next, on January 15, we have the payment of the wages, but following January 15 is January 21, recording total earnings of factory employees amounting to 72,500. So debit to payroll credit, employees income tax payable, and FICA tax payable for the corresponding the amounts at 8 and 10% respectively, and credit to wages payable or accrued payroll. Then also on the next 21st, okay, your next entry on January 21st is to pay the wages payable and credit to cash. Then on the 28th, you should check for the payment of the payroll. We now debit to wages payable and credit cash. Now here, the 31, we have recorded administrative salaries of recorded administrative salaries of 10,000 and sales salaries 18,000 less depreciation. Okay, so we have now January 31 debit to payroll, credit employees, income tax payable, and then credit FICA tax. Okay, so we have now the next entry for 28, no? And then the payment. And finally, on the 31st, recorded administrative salaries. So again, we debit to payroll, credit the deduction, credit wages payable, and finally for payment, wages payable. And we have now the answer to numbers 1, 2, and 3. And by the way, we have the allocation of the payroll debit to work in process for direct labor, factory overhead for indirect labor, and debit factory administrative salaries and sales salaries. So what's your total amount? So we can have missing item there for our administrative salaries. All right, so 31st, debit to work in process, debit factory overhead, administrative salaries on the 15th and on the 31st. So administrative salaries for 10,000 and 10,000 is 20,000. The sales salaries 18,000 for each payment. So we now have the debit to the account factory overhead, or we have any amount no for the factory payroll, debit administrative salaries for the office payroll, and sales salaries for the stores payroll, credit to payroll. Now take note that the debit to work in process will summarize the payroll costs that you have entered on each week. So for item requirement number 2, compute the previous form to show the payroll taxes imposed on the employer for January. So we now have the factory wages with total taxable earnings, administrative salaries, sales salaries. Now, the FICA tax equal to, no, for the factory wages of 325,000. Then we multiply it by 8%. And for the federal unemployment tax of 1%. By the way, in requirement number 2, we are preparing the journal entry to distribute the payroll taxes, assuming that the payroll taxes imposed on the employer for factory wages are to be charged to factory overhead. The taxes for administrative salaries are to be charged to miscellaneous administrative expense, and the taxes for sales salaries are to be charged to Okay, so we have requirement number 2. We have now for factory wages, 325,000, and we have the deductions, so giving us the total payroll taxes. Then for administrative salaries and for sales salaries, the total taxable earnings, and then we have the deductions and the employer payroll taxes as stated in requirement number 2. We are now going to assume that the payroll taxes imposed on the employer for factory wages are to be charged to factory overhead. The taxes for administrative salaries are to be charged to miscellaneous administrative, and taxes for sales salaries charged to miscellaneous selling. So we now have the number 3 requirement for the journal entry. So debit factory overhead for 42 to 50, debit miscellaneous administrative, debit miscellaneous selling, credit FICA tax payable, federal unemployment tax payable, and state unemployment tax payable. Now these are your employer payroll taxes. 4, assume that a factory employees worked on January 29, 30, January 29 and 30, and 31. What was the amount of accrued wages in January 31? Hint, assume that there were no accrued wages at the beginning of the month. So we have now the wages earned and accrued as of January 31 for a total of 302,500 for direct labor and direct labor of 22,500, and then we have the wages paid of 281,200, the accrued amount of 43,800. So that's now for problem 3-10, P3-10. Now I'll take up P3-11. So you will have an idea of accounting for bonus, vacation, and holiday pay. P3-11, that's now for the factory payroll for the week is 200,000, consisting of 140,000 earned by 100 direct laborers and $60,000 earned by 30 indirect laborers. Total of factory bonuses to be received at year end estimated at 400,000. All factory workers receive a 2-week paid vacation and 5 paid holidays. Prepare the journal entry to distribute the weekly payroll. So we have now in problem 3-11, we debit to work in process, debit factory overhead for indirect labor, and credit to payroll for the total of the factory payroll of 200,000. Then in number 2, we debit factory overhead for the bonus, debit factory overhead for the vacation pay, debit factory overhead for the holiday pay, credit bonus liability, vacation pay liability, and holiday pay liability. So we now get the computations of 400,000. That's total factory bonuses, 400,000, and then we divide that by 50 weeks. So meaning it's 8,000 for 1 week. Then 200,000 times 2 weeks divided by 50, it's still 800,000 for the vacation pay. And for the holiday pay, we now get 200,000 divided by 5 days times 5 days is still 200,000. We divide it by 50 weeks, so it's 4,000 per week. Then we still have 3-12. It's similar to 3-11 for 3-12. 3-12 accounting for bonus, vacation pay, and holiday pay. Using the information in 3-11, prepare the entries to 1, distribute the weekly payroll, 2, record the costs and liabilities related to the bonus, vacation, holiday pay, assuming that the friends benefits of the direct laborers are charged to the individual jobs worked during the period. So our entry now is to debit to work in process for the bonus. Okay, so we have ilan yun? 2, 3, ang 40, 2, 3, 40. Oo. Hindi na. Oh. Sige, med. Hindi na siya. So we have now in problem 312, debit to work in process, and debit to factory overhead for indirect labor, credit to payroll. Then debit to work in process for the bonus, and also for the vacation pay and for the holiday pay. Then we have to debit factory overhead for the bonus and for the vacation pay and holiday pay. It depends if the workers receiving the bonus are factory workers, which involve direct work, no? Or we involve direct workers, then we charge it to work in process. However, if you involve indirect workers, then we charge it to factory overhead. So credit to bonus liability, vacation pay liability, and holiday pay liability. Now we have the corresponding computations at the bottom. Okay, so I hope that can help up to this problem.